Hello, my name is Florian Nuţă, and I'm a professor at the University of Galaţi in Romania. And I am delighted to be with you today to discuss a little bit about energy transition and those effects of poverty and human development. Everybody is talking today about energy transition, energy security, energy efficiency. So it's quite a critical topic, quite a hot topic, and it's creating a lot of pressure on communities, individuals, governments, international bodies, and so on. That is because we all try to keep our homes, our industries, our economies going, and we need a lot of energy to do this. But at the same time, the classical way of producing energy is creating a lot of environmental pressure. It's creating a lot of emissions, pollution, and we all have to find a way to cope with this reality and find new ways to have this transition, a smooth transition towards other kinds of other sources of energy, less harmful to the environment. But at the same time, a lot of communities and a lot of countries in this world are struggling with other issues, other challenges, such as poverty and achieving a certain threshold of human development. So those populations have a certain standard of living and happiness. The context for this research is quite intuitive, because we are trying to debate and to include in our study, in our assessment, several sustainability goals, such as poverty and gender equality. These two sustainable development goals are critical to ensure a better life for our communities and for all the people in the world. At the same time, energy transition, as I said before, trying to find new sources of energy, renewable sources of energy, is one of the key actions for mitigating climate change and environmental degradation. However, due to the challenges related to renewable energy costs and affordability, other social and economic features, such as poverty and gender disparities, may affect its efficiency. How is that? We all know that all technologies, all immature technologies are expensive to be put in place, and are expensive further to be exploited and to generate outcomes. So if you put these things together, you will find out that having this energy transition is a hard feature for those emerging and developing countries or communities, because we are talking about countries, but at the same time there are developed countries maybe, or fast emerging countries with a lot of communities still with a lot of problems and which are left behind. So we are talking about both countries as a whole and communities. In previous research, other scholars debated on the relationship between poverty and energy. And a certain concept called energy paradox was arised and was included in the doctrine. How can you explain the energy paradox? So poor households pay more for their energy consumption than richer people, only because they cannot afford to invest in energy efficient goods or more efficient fuels. At the same time, they are allocating a larger share of their income for energy consumption to keep their households warm, to have warm food, and so on. Under these circumstances, they will still stay poor because they cannot break this cycle, having to pay a lot of financial resources for energy and being unable to step forward to more efficient, energy efficient goods and less expensive and more efficient fuels. At the same time, discussing about other issues beside the economic one, energy poverty will lead to indoor pollution, added carbon emissions, biodiversity loss, and health problems for those communities. For the individuals, this will create more economic constraints, deepening the general poverty. Additionally, they will put pressure on national budgets and will demand for public intervention. Why is that? Because think a little. Less expensive fuels, which create pollution, which create health issues. It is true that the energy at the first sight is cheaper, but you have to consume more of it, and you have to have a lot of health creating issues. These health problems will demand intervention from the governments, because the governments will have to allocate a lot of money for public health, will have to invest money in these directions, and of course the national budgets will be under pressure. And keep in mind that this is about emerging or developing countries mainly, which are already with limited resources, with chronic deficits in their public budgets, and limited sources to finance a lot of social issues. So, starting from this problem, this issue of the energy, a lot of other problems arise and put under pressure both individuals, households, and public bodies, and of course governments. Having a little graphical representation of this, you can say that energy poverty is creating pollution, is creating environmental problems, but the environmental problems are not just the problems of the environment, of the planet, of the nature. It is also a problem for those populations living in those regions and areas affected by intensive pollution and a lot of emissions. This pollution and all the issues that are coming with it create a lot of pressure on the financial resources. Financial resources, individual or private financial resources, and for public budgets and public financial resources. This pressure and this limited amount of economic potential and financial resources will keep those regions, communities, individuals at the same state of poverty, of economic poverty and social poverty. And staying there in their poverty, they will not be able to invest more in less pollution from energy consumption, or in energy efficient appliances and goods and so on. They will not even try to find goods that are energy efficient or that are coming from an energy efficient supply chain, because they cannot afford. And they will always try to find and consume those poor quality goods. But those poor quality goods, generally speaking, are less energy efficient or are produced in not so friendly, not so environmental friendly supply chains and industries. Explaining this energy poverty issue and how those energy sources affect the communities and their economic potential and their health and so on, their social status, after all, is this energy ladder, which is quite interesting, because we can see here that the very low income populations will be inclined to use solid fuels, but not so efficient solid fuels. They will consume crop wastes, agricultural wastes, dungs, wood, and a lot of, let's say, informal sources of energy. Why? Because a lot of these solid fuels are just there to be gathered. They don't even need to invest money or to buy these sources, or if they are buying these solid fuels, they are more cheaper than other sources on this ladder. If we are moving forward to clean fuels, we are going towards electricity mainly, and of course some of the fossil fuels which are less environmental degradation related, because we accepted that natural gas, for example, is less harmful for the environment. But on top of the ladder, we have electricity. But think a little about electricity. Electricity, suppose that those households are connected to the national grid. They have access to that national grid where the electricity is delivered to the population, right? But what if they don't afford to get connected to the national grid? If they cannot afford to connect to this national grid of electricity providers, they will still stay on the traditional biomass fuels, solid fuels, and they will not even benefit from the energy transition, because if we are thinking about how renewable sources produce electricity, but if those communities are not connected to the national grid and they are not getting that electricity, they will not even benefit from the renewable sources and from the energy transition. So even if the country is investing and it's struggling to move forward and to increase the share of renewable energy sources in producing electricity, those communities, and that's why I said at the beginning that even if in a country we are seeing a lot of statistics indicating that the energy transition is going well, is moving forward, because we increase the renewable sources in total amount of electricity produced and delivered to population. Some communities, some disadvantaged communities will still be left behind because they are not connected to the national grid. And they will have to somehow get their warm in their houses, their cooking and heating sources, and they will stay at the bottom of this energy ladder with solid fuels, creating further a lot of pollution, affecting the common environment and their own health. Another issue besides poverty is gender. Gender is creating, according to previous studies, different energy consumption patterns. Why is that? Because it was documented in previous research that women have more influence on households' energy consumption patterns. At the same time, involving women in energy decisions can reduce the electricity bill with a quarter, which is quite interesting. At the same time, involving and moving from households and from private consumption to maybe business and decision making, involving women in management reduces the carbon emissions. For this study alone, we used pooled OLS based on Driscoll-Gray estimators and moments quantile regression. For the country selection, we had some quite a diverse group of developed and emerging European nations, such as Austria, Bulgaria, Croatia, France, Germany, Netherlands, Portugal, Slovenia, and Spain. So you can see that we have big European economies, quite developed, but also emerging European nations such as Bulgaria, for example. The main variables we used for this study was the final consumption households energy use, poverty headcount ratio of female to male labor force participation rate, seats held in by women in national parliament, so decision making, right? And public environmental spending, which was a control variable. The main results, I've selected 3 main results for this discussion. Poverty decreases energy use. Women participation to labor market decrease also energy use. and additionally, women involvement in decision-making process decrease energy use. And of course, the control, the public spending for environmental targets increase energy use. At first sight, these results may seem a little weird, especially the last one, because if we are connecting energy consumption with carbon emissions and environmental degradation, and seeing that public spending will increase energy use, may seem a little awkward. But think about the selected countries and think about the increased share of renewable sources in total consumption. So because these results may seem awkward at first sight, we have to discuss their meaning. And for the first one, namely that the poverty decreases energy use, the meaning is that poverty limits the access to energy sources and decrease households' energy use, while the households lean towards energy poverty and informal sources of energy, which of course is responsible for environmental degradation. So if we are thinking about those communities and those households getting their sources of energy from the bottom of the energy ladder, the result is quite normal. Okay. The second result, women participation to labor market and women involvement in decision-making process, supposes a higher level of education and responsibility. Under these circumstances, the result is an environmental friendly behavior and increased energy efficiency. So here, the result saying that women involvement in labor market and in decision-making process have to be connected with energy efficiency, not as much with not consuming energy because they don't want or they don't afford. Okay, it's just that education is creating responsible behaviors, and in this case, we tend to believe that is increasing energy efficiency. The last results and the meaning of this last result: public spending for environmental protection involves investing in renewable sources of energy and the access of people to clean energy sources while phasing out fossil fuels. So we are thinking that public spending for environmental protection will influence the share of renewable sources in total energy production, will increase the number of households which are connected to the national grid, and will have quite an influence in energy transition. Okay. It also supposes increasing the financing for green energy investments and actions dedicated to this energy transition, energy just transition we are discussing. The conclusions are quite intuitive because we are discussing about poverty, and of course it's quite an issue, and the public authorities and the decision makers should direct their policies in mitigating poverty, also for energy targets and environmental protection targets. Gender diversity and social involvement, again, previous studies and this study reveals that involving women in labor market, involving women in decision making, it's something beneficial for the society, generally speaking, for the financial and economic potential of a broader category of people, and of course is creating premises for mitigating environmental degradation and increasing energy efficiency. Public spending for environmental targets, it's also good and will have to be kept as a target for future, even if, of course, there are a lot of other issues and a lot of other problems arising. If we are thinking about strategic issues, economic sensitivities, and a lot of structural gaps, if we are thinking about those emerging economies and so on. But the public authorities and governments should keep in mind that the environmental public spending is still important for this planet and for the population and for economy, because if we are thinking about previous discussions, the environmental degradation is creating other issues, and the public money will have to be directed to those issues. So it's not just if I'm not spending on environmental targets, it's everything okay, I will keep the money to invest in, I don't know, economic objectives. No, not investing in environmental protection will create the premises for spending money for other difficult issues such as public health. Thank you for your attention. I look forward to getting the questions from you and debating on this topic, which is quite interesting and critical. Thank you. Bye-bye.